is in session. Before we start, we're going to go ahead and do the invocation on the work session. We'll go ahead and get started. So, Mr. Perkins, would you do the invocation for us, please?
Sure. Let's pray. You get into the mic. Father in heaven, we're thankful for the blessings and the opportunities of life, the opportunities of service, the opportunities, Lord, to work for others. And we simply need your strength. We need your wisdom. We need your guidance to help us, Lord, to make right choices and decisions for others. Pray that you bless this board. Pray that you'll bless our schools and bless our families, Lord, as a whole. Help us, O Lord, as a governing group body, Lord, to honor your name by honoring the choices that you would have us to make for the people that we're serving. We ask that you'll be in this place and be with us now as we officiate this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
I'd like to add, welcome back, Mr. Perkins. It's good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Great to have you back in the seat.
It's great to be back.
All right.
All right. Informational item, Madison County Growth, Madison County Subdivision Engineer's Office. Mr. Kazort.
Afternoon, board members. We invited Chuck Palmer, who's our Madison County engineer, to come over today and talk to us about Madison growth. So when he gets through telling you all the numbers, I think we all already know they're multiplying rapidly, and then we'll open it up to any questions before we may have. Absolutely, my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. You can put the microphone so they can get on.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the help. All right, again, Chuck Faulkner, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and appreciate what you do. I've got 3 kids, 3 children in the Madison County school system, and they love it. We've enjoyed it, so thank you for what you do. As far as growth, I think I'm just going to share some raw numbers, some raw data with you and go through that fairly quickly and then let you ask questions so we make sure we talk about what is of interest to you. If you will, I've got, I think each of the board members has a couple of sheets. Let's start with the 8.5 by 11 or letter size sheet. And what that is we track our subdivisions by lot as they're approved. And you'll see it's a somewhat complicated sheet, but a couple of key things you need to know. There's 2 parts of a subdivision process. First part is a proposed plat. That's when an engineer or developer comes in and submits a set of plans and we approve it for construction. That's called a proposed plat. So once we issue that approval, the contractor would go out and start building the subdivision. Once they're complete, we do a final inspection, and at that point in time, they resubmit, and that's called a final plat. And that's when the lots are ready to be sold and homes to be constructed on them. So we choose to track one or the other, either proposed or final, because if we count approved lots, we're counting them twice, if that makes sense. So everything I talked to you about this afternoon is going to be the proposed plat, which is when they begin construction. We track it month by month and year by year. And just a quick rundown. Last year, 2021, we approved 3,696 proposed plat lots. 3,700 on roughly. That's by far the most we've ever approved. For reference, 2020 was 2,483, and 2019 was 2,000. Okay, so the last 3 years going backwards, 3,700 last year, 2020 was 2,500, 2019 was 2,000 roughly, 2,100. This year, thus far, we have approved 1,430, excuse me, that's the wrong number, 2,038 lots so far this year. So if I project that out, we're going to be right around where we were in 2020, which was that 2,500 range. So that's what we're looking at is 2,500 new homes or new lots to be constructed on by the end of this year is what we're projecting. You know, I'm sure of interest to you is where are those? The large majority of those are in District 1. So District 1 for Madison County is the Meridianville, Hazel Green, Commissioner Roger Jones, Commissioner Tom Brandon's area. I'm going back a couple of years. So that's by far where we're seeing the most growth. The last couple of years, the bulk of that has been in the McCullum Road, Steger Road, Patterson Lane, right in that central area. Where we're starting to see a lot of interest in District 1 would be Maysville Road, Winchester Road. There's no guarantee on that, but when developers come in and talk to us about potential land and potential development, a lot of that is, in addition to that hotbed that we've seen for the last couple of years, the Winchester-Maysville area. And in District 4, we're starting to see a little bit, that's Commissioner Vandiver's area, the Madison Crossroads community. Lots of people are looking there. Not a lot happening. We haven't seen a lot of plans on it yet so far, but when people come in, that's what we're seeing the most of. So from subdivisions, let's see if there's anything else I want to tell you there. That's really it from subdivisions. And your legal size sheet of paper that you've got is new residential construction permits. So just new residential construction permits, as you would expect, following a similar trend. So far this year, the Building Inspection Department has approved about 1,500 new residential permits. Projected out, that'll be about 1,900. Last year, throughout the entire year last year, we approved 2,100 new residential permits. So following very similarly to what we saw in subdivisions, and again, as you would expect, 2022 projected District 1, 1,350. Last year, 1,374. So from a building inspection, new home starts, it's been pretty consistent over the last couple of years. From a subdivision standpoint, we had a huge year last year, and it seems to be leveling back out to where we were 2 years ago on subdivisions. So in a nutshell, that's what we see, that's what we track. If you want any more detailed information, have any questions about what we're seeing, I'll be glad to talk to you about it. But that's really what we track from a pure number standpoint.
These are all typically single-family homes? Are they apartments wrapped into this, or just homes?
But this is single-family homes. And that's a great question. Commercial sites are harder for us to track. We do have that information to some degree, and I'll be glad to share it. But this is single-family homes.
Okay.
We have, and one reason we don't track it very well, quite frankly, is because prior to really last year, we saw very few commercial site plans that were multifamily. Very few. That changed last year, as you know, and is continuing to change. So we will continue to develop the way we track that and report that information.
The Cliff Farms area out in Madison area, the southern part of the county, our area, this county school system area, are all those lots, because looks like they finished one area and now they're starting on another area. So my question is, are all those new construction, were they already previously done in 2021? In other words, do they have to get a permit every time they want to do another lot? Or did they get permits for all 600 some odd homes that are going to be built in that area?
From a subdivision standpoint, the large majority of those were in last year's numbers. I believe we approved at the last commission meeting what I believe is to be the last phase of single-family homes in Cliff Farms. I think it was 190 lots that we approved last commission meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
Proposed plat. So they will start constructing that this year. So from a subdivision standpoint, to answer your question, those were approved last year. From a new residential construction building permit standpoint, those are as they start building a home. So some of those would have been spread out into this. Matter of fact, most of those are probably this year.
And then the 2, 3, 4 large apartment complexes that are there, they're not factored in.
They are not included in this, that's correct.
Any ideas of how to get a handle on the apartment situation,
As far as tracking it, or as far as?
or how it might impact our school population?
Yes, from a tracking standpoint, we can do that fairly easily. We just have not historically done it. But that's something we can certainly start doing. from a managing it standpoint, without zoning in the county, there's very little we can do from a management standpoint. That's one of our biggest challenges, is with no zoning in the county, trying to plan for many of the same challenges you face. If we don't know where it's coming, which you don't without zoning, how do you plan for it?
So a landowner could sell 100 acres of land to a developer who wants to build a 500-unit apartment building, and you guys don't have oversight on that, or you guys don't approve that, or how's that?
We do have oversight on it, but we don't have, most municipalities have a zoning which that's not really accurate, which certainly governs density.
Right.
We don't have that. We don't have any density restrictions because, again, there is no zoning in the county. We will review the plans, primarily from an access standpoint, from a fire code standpoint, and from a stormwater standpoint. But beyond that, we have very little authority in the review process.
So to that point, if they're building a subdivision, as far as roads, that's not something the county commission can expect from the builder. Say, hey, look, if you're going to be building a house on Patterson Road, we need you to add an additional lane or anything like that. Does the county commission have any oversight in that part of it, or it's just?
And again, that's very tricky. We have that internal discussion all the time.
Okay.
We do the most that we can with the tools that we have. Certainly inside the subdivision, we have the overview responsibility for that, and we can dictate what happens there. Turn lanes, we can require turn lanes. Beyond the entrance to the subdivision, it gets more difficult.
Gotcha.
We try to work with the developer to make sure, particularly at dangerous intersections, we'll really bear down on that. But as far as road width, we're limited on what we can do there and what we can require.
And to your point, and I speak strictly on Cliff Farms because I go in and out of there a lot, that entrance onto Waltriana coming out of there is, well, it's several accidents that have already occurred there, and it's a disaster in the making if we can't get a light there. And I realize it's close to the Capshaw and Waltriana lights, but if we start running buses out there, we're gonna have a problem. And then the one that backs out into Balch, isn't that Balch on the other side? Balch. Back on the Balch, that too probably needs to have a traffic light, because there's a point where you can't see traffic coming through that hill. So those are two areas from a school board's perspective. When I look at running buses in and out of there to take our children to and from school, a traffic light is absolutely a must in the near future.
Good news on the Waltriana intersection. We have a light plan. The design process is ongoing right now. As a matter of fact, we started acquiring right-of-way. Not only will there be a signal there, that will be a 5-lane section up to McCrary, I believe. So there will be significant improvements on that side. On the west side, the chairman and the commissioner are working hard to figure out a way to get a turn lane at that intersection. I don't know that we will have a signal at this point in time, but we will at least work on a couple of turn lanes at that intersection. We agree with you. Both of those are difficult intersections.
And then they finally lined it, so you now have cars that know you've got to be over here if you're going to turn right, you got to be over here if you're going to turn left. For a while there, it was the wild, wild west of traffic control there. It was bad.
It was
People would be
very-
all the way over here, and they'd go, "Ooh, I want to turn left," and they'd cut people off. And I saw a few close calls. So.
I had the opportunity to see that firsthand myself.
Yeah.
You're correct.
Any more?
Anything else for me?
And these districts 2, 5, and 6, I mean, they don't have any numbers in them, so I'm assuming that those areas, there's not a whole lot going on.
That's right. District 2 is Madison, so the bulk of that is in the city of Madison,
Right.
any city limits. So we wouldn't, same with District 5, it's primarily in the city of Huntsville. And District 6 is primarily in the city of Huntsville. So, yeah. We don't count, if it's not in unincorporated Madison County, we don't review it and we don't track it.
Let's see, okay, so 1's Hazel Green, 4 is,
Us.
Harvest, Madison Crossroads,
and then
Tony.
what's 3?
3 is South, New Hope,
New Hope, okay.
Orange Crossroads, Gurley. And there is development there, but we're seeing the majority of that as subdivisions come in as being annexed into the city by the developer as they develop.
So you're seeing more annexation over on that side of the county?
Yes, sir. And typically, that's developer-driven.
Gotcha.
Like in New Hope. That's loud. In New Hope, would the city, like New Hope City, would they issue permits that you don't see on this?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Because I was about to say, there's a lot more growth in New Hope than this shows. But that's because that town issues those permits, not y'all.
That is correct. This only captures unincorporated Madison County.
Okay, so we need those numbers too.
For the New Hope.
Like New Hope, Crossroads, same thing, 'cause they have
Gurley.
a town. Yeah,
Gurley?
Yep. Okay.
but I appreciate what you've done.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Faulkner.
very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Ready to move on? All right. All right, item B, capital plan discussion. Now, we're going to kind of talk about the capital plan. We also want to kind of just talk about some of the adjustments that we're looking at making as it relates to trying to take care of the population number, our growth within our district. And again, we've had some of these discussions, and I think that Ken kind of started talking about it last time, last board meeting. But I think that one of the big things that I do want to just, want to keep in everybody's mind is what we have to do to accommodate our growth situation. We don't have the revenue sources that, other areas have. So we've got to take and look at what we have and then try to accommodate and take care of our students and their needs based off of what we have. And so the plans and things that we've talked about, we've gotten together, our team, we've looked at all of our data, our numbers, what our schools' capacities are, and we've looked at what we have and based it off of what we can actually do. And so we're doing a pay-as-you-go type of financing and funding and taking care of what we need to take care of within our district. However, we feel like we've gotten a plan that we wanted to just give everybody a chance to talk about and discuss that will take care of what we need for now while we are still looking at future growth and future opportunities to do some other things as well. So what I want to do, I know that the board, you all had this document that was sent out a while ago, and I know we've had some discussions on it, but I just kind of want to go through this. Joseph's going to kind of talk about some of the projects and things of that nature as we go along, but we want to just kind of have a discussion as we kind of go through this. And so if you have that document, it's going to kind of just touch through it, brief overview of it. District 1, of course, a lot of growth there, but we're looking at Hazel Green Elementary and a grade configuration in that district, District 1. So for next year, Hazel Green Elementary, the students, fourth grade students, will remain at Hazel Green and become fifth graders at that particular school. And that will affect about 106 students. The following year, fourth and fifth graders will remain at Hazel Green, which will make Hazel Green a pre-K through sixth grade school. And so you're looking at a total number of about 255 students, which will help to alleviate some of the issues in terms of numbers at Moore's Mill Intermediate. Hazel Green Elementary has the room to be able to do this. We've looked at different ideas and different plans in terms of maybe moving sixth grade to Meridianville. However, when you start looking at moving the sixth graders there, you start looking at the numbers, it puts Meridianville Middle close to capacity, and then we're coming back to the same issue and problem that we actually are trying to alleviate. But we feel like this plan will actually help to alleviate and give us some opportunities to take care of some of the growth that we have out there. Lynn Fanning, currently, yeah,
Stop
go
real
ahead.
quick. So what's the max capacity at Hazel Green Elementary?
Hazel Green is what, is it 1,200, 1,200? 1205.
And when you incorporate these two new grade levels, what will be roughly the total number of students? Here's a grade.
You got those, so you're looking at about, includes pre-K.
Okay. And you said about two?
About 255.
250, okay. So we'll still have some capacity when we do this.
We'll still have capacity. And it, of course, gives capacity for Morris Mill as well.
Right, right.
What's the situation at Monroe, at the middle school?
Meridianville. We're at what,
So we have more than
6.5?
enough capacity at the middle school
Yeah.
currently.
No, but what is it?
Jeff, do you have those current numbers pulled up?
We're pulling it up on the screen right now. So capacity, 1,204, and current enrollment is 703, which is
Okay, so that is different than what was just said. There is plenty of room there.
Yes.
There's room at Meridianville. but if you-
Moore's Mill Intermediate is the
right,
one we're
yeah.
struggling with
Moore's
space.
Mill.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
thought you said you had to keep the sixth graders here because there's a problem at the middle school.
Well, no, we don't want to create a problem at the middle school with the growth in that particular area. So that's why we're reconfiguring it this way.
Okay.
We don't want to take all the sixth graders and move them over there, because that would actually raise that number possibly close to capacity.
Okay.
So currently, Lynn Fanning, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Jim, once we move those children back up, or those students back to Haven Green Elementary School, we're going to go back into Woolly Gym and have a fifth and sixth grade ED there. I've talked to Dr. Head as well about how he wants to do it in the afternoon. So during the day, fifth and sixth graders, we have an area for their PE and gym time away from the other younger students there. We're going to look at going in, refurbishing the floor, kind of refurbishing Woolly Gym and having an awning that leads kids out to that. But that is on our capital plan as well, as we approved earlier this last month.
Any questions on that? Any other questions on that? Okay. Lynn Fanning, of course, currently, there's no room in Lynn Fanning, even with the last addition to it. So the plan is to put in 4 learning cottages, and Joseph will look at that. The
Give us
f-
something to talk about tonight, when we talk about Lynn Fanning and then Fort Harvest too. I had an architect just give us a quick drawing, a proposal of what we can do with Lynn Fanning. The good thing about our construction and our last project at Lynn Fanning, we have capacity to feed more students there. So, with this, and what they need right now would be 4 learning cottages, and we're looking at 2 locations, either here, if we can get them closer to the awning, or possibly out front, to take the students this coming year, for them to have classrooms. And then, as we start that same process of, after we talk, this would be a new addition right in front of the school. And to me, I think it's not an area I first looked at. I was thinking about trying to put it in the back. But with here, we're looking at 8 classrooms and a new admin area, a new entry area. We can do that, add some additional security, makes it look nicer from the front, not looking to try to spend a lot of money. Expensive enough. Reutilizing the canopy that was here. Now, quickly, I have prints over here for you to look at after. This was something they put together quickly for us. They were trying to make this come out to the road equal here. I think this building can be pushed back. I know Dr. Minsky and I, KQ as well, maybe move this around so the entrance is here side, just to give it a better look from the road as well. We're looking at 8 classrooms there and a new admin, and then, like I say, with the added security of the airlock that we've been adding to all the other schools. Additional parking out front, and then I've also talked to Tom Brandon, our commissioner up there, several times, and we're going to meet. We're trying to figure out a way for our car rider line. Right now, it's 2 lane, and then it goes down to 1 lane. That if there's something that they can help us with, that we can go 3 lane down to 2 lane, and to get some more of the cars off of Moores Mill Road in that area during the school traffic time. So, looking at that as well. I do have a printout over there, but tonight, this is something for us to generally have an idea of the direction of what we think is needed there, so. We did, and I'll share this, we said, do we need 6 classrooms or 8 classrooms? The thing is, we think we need 8 classrooms, but if we wanted to look the other way, with a construction project, you've already got so much paid into it for the infrastructure, for the overhead, for the on-site, for the contractor. If we knock off 2 classrooms, we would save less than $500,000. I don't think that, if we got into a really crunchy number, it's worth that. The reason we're here, we have to manage growth somehow, and we either have to manage growth by having a couple extra classrooms, if that's the case, or learning colleges. So, I think it's worth looking at.
Are those learning colleges similar to the ones like at Grissom High School, or is this a different?
Yes.
That's what we're proposing, yes, and that's what was on our capital plan.
Okay.
with that. We will, if this is the direction we're going, we will also, with Karen and her group, we'll get the bid out of what our requirements are. We've already got the specs that Huntsville City uses, so we know exactly what they've got, and I like those, they look very nice. And set them up that way.
So is the plan to keep them there after the construction is over?
No,
Okay,
it's not the plan.
okay.
I know it's wrong, it's not the plan.
Well, I would rather not, but I guess my thought is if we get these 8 classrooms and we see that we're at capacity, do we need to hold on to them for about a year out there just to see where we are? I think we'll have some flexibility, but my concern is what if it's not enough after the growth and everything?
I think with the way we're doing it with bidding and with leasing, we would have that option
Okay,
to people, as long as we need it. The other thing about having those is we would love to have this construction ready for the opening of 2024.
Hmm.
And if we didn't quite meet that, they still have education classrooms, and they can move in at Thanksgiving, fall break, Christmas, something like that, which gives us a little bit of flexibility, especially with construction and new house, and then if we still need them, then we can work that out. The other thing is because of the infrastructure that we have to put in now for learning colleges, it would be there. So if we had to pull them out and we find ourselves in the same situation 2 or 3 years down the road, we have our infrastructure there to bring something back in and tie it back in.
okay.
That's one thing, I say, I do have over there, we can talk more. I think the next one, I don't want to get in front of you.
No, go ahead, Joe,
Can
with
you-
the harvest.
Oh,
Well, unless you have some
can
questions.
you go back to the capacity numbers again? So the numbers in red, it's hard to see, 70. I can't see the other side of it. What's the schools?
Right now, that says they're 20 over.
Yeah, Penny's 20 and Moore's Mill
73.
is 73.
Well, I guess, okay, so one thing I was thinking was, what if you made 2 elementary schools and you didn't have an intermediate anymore?
So you mean in turning them into K-5 schools instead of? Well, I think what'll happen is, and this is just, looking at the numbers, what'll happen is it will take all 6th graders would have to go to Meridianville Middle. And so right now, I'm looking at the capacity numbers.
Or you could make them K6, whatever. I mean, doesn't matter.
Or you mean have three K-6s?
You'd have Lynn Fanning, which is already over capacity, would turn into a K-6.
It is a, what, okay.
It's a
Well,
K-3.
you'd have to rezone to make it fit, right?
Yeah, you would to make it fit.
Right. And then do your new construction at your new school. Would that make any sense?
I don't know if that would make
Thank you.
sense if you have available capacity now in schools, and you can reconfigure some of your schools to accommodate the capacity. I think if we were at full capacity at all of our schools, I certainly think that is something that we
But
would.
we are at full capacity on those two. Those are the two we're talking about.
Well, say for instance, I guess what I was thinking is if Lynn Fanning was at capacity, Walnut Grove was at capacity, and Hazel Green was at capacity, you'd actually need a new school. And so then at that point, you would say, okay, we need a new elementary school. How do we rezone to accommodate all the students and give some coverage for the new school? But if you got two schools, an intermediate and elementary school at over capacity, and you have an elementary school under, I would try to see could I get that elementary school higher capacity before I build a new school.
I'm not saying build a new school. I'm saying change Moore's Mill to be an elementary school. So then you have 3 elementary schools. Well, okay, well, Walnut Grove is sort of out of the discussion, I guess. I mean, we're not really discussing it, but, and so you'd rezone your kids so that they didn't have to transition to an intermediate anymore. Because doesn't that cause a problem, those 4 through 6 divisor numbers? Isn't that kind of an issue anyway?
Well, there, I mean, it's, the divisor number, but is an issue in the sense of, we would like to have those classrooms to be smaller. However, they've been working through and looking at, the state is looking at changing the divisor and extending it elementary all the way through intermediate. So if they did that, that wouldn't even be an issue.
Yeah,
But that's something
they
they're
haven't
taking
done
up.
that.
They haven't, but I feel like the conversation is strong enough for that to happen. And if that does happen, then that changes the dynamics of what we actually do. The plan that we actually have right now fixes everyone and gives everyone some additional room to grow with minimum impact on a larger number of kids. I think if we reconfiguration or rezoning is usually you rezone when you can't do the reconfiguration. So because we can reconfigure and it impact less kids district-wide, it's better to go that route than the rezoning that will impact probably more individuals, more families.
Well, I was just thinking the Moore's Mill is your new facility, right? And it's on that big old plot of land where you have plenty of room to grow. Whereas you're cramming stuff into this Lynn Fanning. So if you make Lynn Fanning, the kids that go there fit the school and try and make it, instead of adding to the school, just make the number of kids that go there fit. And then put your bigger population at Moore's Mill where you have all this land and you can add on abundantly.
I think some of what you have to look at out there too, though, is how far people have to drive to get there.
Yeah, I don't know it.
Or proximity, you're a mile and I don't know, is it a mile, Lynn Fanning from Moore's Mill, maybe?
Yeah, so they're right there together, and, yeah, so
Yeah.
that shouldn't be a big issue.
Maybe. But then the zoning for that, 2 elementary schools a mile next to each other.
Well, you got that in Monrovia, you got Monrovia, Endeavor, and Legacy all within this
All
one.
within a 3-mile radius.
I mean, they're very close together.
Well, we could take a look at the numbers and see what that does, what that will,
It's
what
just-
it all
And you've got
entails.
that, and Moore's Mill has that storm shelter. I mean, you've got kind of the niceties there too already that you might build onto. Whereas this is an old school that you're trying to build onto. I don't know.
currently, we have two intermediate schools. Mr. Solly, I mean, maybe you could answer, what was our rationale for the 4 through 6 configuration academically at the time we did that?
Well, I'm not sure instruction drove that decision.
Okay.
I think it was more, you know, with, obviously, Riverton Intermediate was the first one.
Right.
There was land available on the Buckhorn High School campus, to build a middle school. It allowed for the current, at that time, Riverton Middle School, then to be reconfigured into, they didn't want to make two elementary schools right next to each other, you know, sort of thing. So they thought, well, this will help alleviate overcrowding at Riverton Elementary and at Mount Carmel. And so they, you know, it was pretty simply located between the two. And so that was the
Gotcha.
rationale. We had available land at Buckhorn, so we didn't have to buy land for the middle school. And then we had a school that, you know, could function as
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
But it's, to some extent, when you have those two grades there, like, parents don't get super involved because their kids are gonna go in and out, I mean, real quick, so if you,
Having more grades together, I mean, fewer transitions, I will not disagree with that.
Right.
It's better to keep them there longer, if you can. If that, you know, if we have the funds, if we've got the, you know, all of those kind of things, if you take all that off the plate, it's better to keep kids in school, so that fewer transitions.
right.
You're actually saying kind of swap the schools a little bit and put the addition at Moore's Mill?
I'm saying make them both the same number of grades, and then put the number of kids that fit in Land Fanning there, like, try to figure that out, and then make your overflow go to Moore's Mill, because it's the newer school with the land you can expand on. Sort of like Legacy. Legacy was made to be expandable, right? And so I think that was sort of the idea, just looking at the land that's out there, that Moore's Mill was the one that was made to be expandable. So, just looking at it, that's the way it looks.
So you're looking at 3 K6s?
Right.
Any other questions, comments?
Go ahead, Mr. Burke.
All right. We want to go ahead and look at Harvest, look at District 4. So now Harvest, as Chris can, he can let us know this from firsthand, that there's no room over there at Harvest either. So the plan or the idea is contingent on a couple of things. So the idea is possibly placing 4 learning cottages out there at Harvest, with an addition of a 6, possibly to 8 addition, and looking at possibly rezoning about 103 students. However, the possibility, if the 103 students rezoning takes place, it may potentially we may not have to use the 4 learning cottages.
Mr. Donald and I talked today, we may not need the 4 learning cottages there. We're going to relocate the one that's already existing. With the zone line proposal, we'll lose 103, empty the classroom or 2, so he may have enough growth opportunity in his current school without that. We're still trying to find something. Now, when he starts getting new kids next year, that might be different, but there again, as something for us to talk about, this is the front of the school, this is Wall Triana, front of the school. This is the parking area now, so we're looking at 8 classrooms, 2 restrooms. This is currently where the car riders get in and out. Then, if we were going to do learning cottages, we would put them right there out of the way. time out there walking around looking, trying to figure out the best way. That's the best place to construct those. And there again, we talked about whether 6 or 8 was better there, any value saved there. And I think maybe to go back to your, we're trying to utilize all of our assets the best we can all over the system. That's what we look at there. Whether we need 1, 2, or 0 learning cottages, that can be determined at any time. We can put the bid out for 4 to 8, for 6 to 10. We can put that bid out and have that option and that flexibility with our bid of how many we ultimately need, we can put them there.
Classrooms or cottages?
Cottages. You could do the construction bid that way too. I don't think it would save us any money if you have a
I think
contract.
if we're gonna build something, we might as well build the max. That way you don't have to come back. Because what would the cost be to come back and add on 2 more? It would cost double what the paying. To me, it would be smarter to go ahead and
Build it out.
get what you get while you get it.
Does that include restrooms, or you have to add
Yes,
restrooms?
we have to add 2 banks of restrooms, and both of those projects have a restroom.
And they both have the storm shelter feature?
Yes, and that wasn't mentioned, but in both of those, it would be just like that new wing for the new high school, there at the middle school. The whole area will be, that building was there for, the EFI, the whole area. Restrooms, full concrete.
So doing these jobs also provides some additional safety features for other schools. So we could cram most of our kids in that little area if necessary.
Yes, the architecture design, we're about, I think it's 3 to 5 square feet per.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Okay.
We got a tornado bearing down.
Go into that hallway.
Cordwood.
Yeah. Okay.
And that would be an improvement,
Mm.
those schools of having
Especially for us.
Lynn Fanning's cafeteria, is that as well?
No.
It's not. When you start adding classrooms, and you change occupancy by the Division of Construction Management, you change occupancy by more than 50, and they base their occupancy off classrooms, then you have to do storm shelter.
So where would the storm shelter be then in this?
That whole.
It is-
The whole
it is-
building will be a storm
yeah,
shelter?
The
Okay.
new part.
Yeah, that's good. Can we look at the zone lines for this too?
Yeah. Nikki, can you pull up the zone line for that, for Harvest zone line map?
That's a never go.
Yeah, it's in there.
The words here don't match.
It should be the letter A under the zone line map.
I wish I knew the roads.
That's the one you
better.
clicked?
Huh?
I wish I knew the roads better.
It says moves north to Nick Davis. It's already north of Nick Davis. I live on Nick Davis, and I live north of Nick Davis, and I'm Harvest. South of Nick Davis is Endeavor. So the wording here is not correct. That's why I'm Oops. Okay. So the red and the yellow both are the areas to be rezoned, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. And the reason why I asked that is because the wording on the Endeavor Elementary School one, it says moves north to Nick Davis, Orville Smith. It should be north of Nick Davis, because that was confusing, that's what I was looking
We originally looked at just the area, the bottom area, and realized it
Wasn't enough.
Yeah, if you remember how many students it was like 45 or something like that.
So are those houses like right in front of Harvest Elementary?
No,
That's what it looks like
they're south of, excuse me, they're south of Yarborough.
when you look up there, don't you see elementary on that?
Harvest will be up and to the right.
Are the schools aren't on that map,
The
are they?
school's not on the map. It would be to the right and then up. Yeah. Because Walteriana is still further, not even on the map there that we're showing.
With the many adjustments, we also have to, Harvest is one of those schools, that are only schools with racial identifiable flag,
Mhm.
so we have to make sure that we have, we can't pull students out of that school. We have to make sure that the racial balance is appropriate,
Mhm.
and that
Two.
50 students,
Mhm.
based on the current list that we have, are identified as black students. So that gives us the proper, we're within a range to be able to do that. If you might correct on that. So,
You're trying to
it doesn't
move the
make Harvest
same,
more racially
Yeah, are you trying
Right.
to move the same proportion of the racial
It's not
mix?
necessarily, we just have to make sure that Harvest does not become more racially identifiable as black.
I got you.
Right.
We think it's a-
The percentage can't rise higher than where it
Gotcha.
but you'd probably also get pushback if you moved 100% black, would you? Because then you'd be
You would,
moving,
you definitely would, yeah.
so that puts it back to 50/50.
Again, I think if Cindy can answer that better than I can, but I think when we're looking at rezoning and things like that, they would particularly frown upon making the school more racially identifiable, black than what currently is.
Right, but if you took 100% out, it would become less identifiable, but then you'd be moving 100%.
But you would be basing the move on race. Now you're basing the move on capacity and the needs of the school and a geographical area that's defined, not based on just choosing which children you're moving from school A.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't just choose, it just worked out when we pulled that neighborhood in and we ran the numbers. That's what it came out to, which helps. We weren't picking and choosing which houses, it was just added that neighborhood in, it just worked out to be.
Okay.
And we're not dividing that that subdivision here, right? It's a tree line that kind of runs in between the two subdivisions?
You mean where the yellow is?
Yeah.
No, that's not divided. The only reason that's a different color is because, and I don't know if it's on the next slide. The next slide just zooms in on that subdivision, just so that you can see the road. That's the only reason.
So that other subdivision to the right of the yellow is a different subdivision altogether?
Correct. It's a different I mean, it connects, it does connect.
Okay.
But it also, has an exit out there on Walker Avenue too.
Okay.
We were looking at it too from a busing standpoint.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, no, you're right.
So you wouldn't want to grab it too?
Well, there were two, that's what Dr. Minsky was talking about, with that number, we pulled numbers so many different ways, we were trying to get right to the hundred
That's what we're
number.
looking at right now.
With that other subdivision, I think it was 160 or so, I don't remember, but it was a lot more. So this guy's about the number that we needed to.
So the red square rectangle and the yellow rectangle are both moving.
They're both,
correct?
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so,
That's the proposal, is to move that group of students, that are those residences down to, from Harvard to Endeavor. Again, the current number is 103,
Yeah, it's 103.
and that was a couple of years ago.
so 103 is a good number because it helps Harvest or because
It
it's?
helps Harvest. When we originally looked at it, it was like 40-something. We're like, is it really worth moving 40 students out of the school? So that's why we're looking at, okay, 180 may be a little bit too much, especially, the concern was we were looking at the Cliff Farm area and what
Okay.
that impact's gonna do. So we were like, let's just look at around 100 students, which helps Harvest by clearing out possibly 3 classrooms to get some growth. And also there's a ton of room, Denny's here, so you can share, there's a lot of room in Denver to grow.
Tons.
Right, so that makes me wonder if we shouldn't move more, because it doesn't sound like you would hurt Endeavor. I mean, could you move enough not to even need to build, I guess?
Could we move it not to build?
Moving up, not to build.
I mean, Endeavor currently is, the information I have here about 52% capacity rate. But their capacity is 1,062. And how many do you have right now? 626. Is that good pre-K?
It does include pre-K, there's probably 45, 50 pre-K.
But, and to your point though, Sherry, I mean, I don't disagree, we probably could move more, but then we have to look at the racial imbalance, number one. And number two, there's a very large subdivision being built off of Ford's Chapel Road, north of the Sparkman 9. I mean, they just clear cutted that thing. It's as big as Cliff Farm.
The
So
other
we're gonna
piece
add all
of
those
it-
kids back into Harvest.
Well, that's more reason to get,
Right, but what I'm saying is,
One of the reasons, the other thing that we're always looking at too is the current plan is the students that are being rezoned to Endeavor and those being rezoned to Monrovia Elementary will also matriculate through.
Middle school.
The middle school.
right, okay.
And this way, I think we're putting
88.
based on these current numbers that we have versus adding another group of students. So that's the other reason.
Yeah.
We thought around 100 is about a sweet spot.
Any other questions on that one? So next is Madison Crossroads, which they're almost out of, out of room as well. So, and Dr. Minsky mentioned it. So the students who are in Burwell Garden subdivision will actually transition to Monrovia Elementary School. And you're looking at about 88 students to transition out of there to Monrovia Elementary School. Can we pull those zone lines up? Vicki, thanks.
I haven't had a chance to drive through this. I'm not sure if those roads are now built out or not. I haven't had a chance to do everything.
But the current numbers are 88.
Yeah, that's all.
Those roads are pretty full.
Yeah. People have to have that big there.
Not a lot. Like there.
Okay.
So the number of students is more, I guess.
No,
No, it's,
that's just a picture that we took. The numbers we
Right.
have is.
The number's
based on current
88.
Data that students are illegally
Oh,
on the
okay.
88, 88 students, yeah. And those students will go to Monrovia Elementary.
Isn't Monrovia Elementary closer to Burwell than Madison Crossroads? Seems like visually, it seems like to me, okay,
Pretty sure, I haven't
yeah,
actually.
yeah. So that just makes sense too, okay.
So basically, for District 5, it would be the reverse. All those students will go through Monrovia Middle School. So they'll transition through and go through Monrovia Middle.
Whereas currently, they would be going to Sparkman.
Sparkman Middle. Mhm. Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So we kind of talked about Sparkman Middle. So looking at those students who are at Sparkman Middle, who are maybe in athletics and who might want to stay there, we'll give the current 6th and 7th grade the option of staying at Sparkman rather than transition to Monrovia if they, choose to do so, since they've been there and since they may be engaged in activities and things of that nature to pull them out and make them go. The only catch would be that they may end up having to provide their own transportation to do that if they choose not to transition.
what if you've got a situation where you've got a 6th grader now who would fall into that category, and you've got a 4th grader who would be moving into Sparkman Middle,
Fifth grader.
A 5th grader. Who would have normally gone to Sparkman, but now is gonna go to Monrovia, and the parents go, well, we wanna keep them, I mean, are we gonna
We'll
be,
probably do a unique.
I mean, we're gonna have to look at that. I mean, we're gonna have those cases where
be a
you're gonna have
unique
that.
Situation there.
Yeah.
We can look at those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can
For
look
sure.
at those.
I don't really get that. So why can't the middle school kids just keep going like they were? I mean, like, you're talking about the people in Burwell Gardens, right?
Well, you mean,
Any
why
of them.
can't they continue to go to Sparkman Middle?
Right.
Well, I mean, to move them, to transition them, and then everyone in that particular, in that particular zone goes, that's just the natural transition for them to move from, you know, from Endeavor and Monrovia to that particular school, so.
I'm good with it if they go to the elementary schools, but I'm talking about the ones that won't ever go to the elementary school at Monrovia. I mean, they're already in Sparkman Middle, so, but you're saying.
You're talking
that-
about kids that are already in Sparkman Middle?
Mhm. Is that not what
They,
this
they-
says?
they can stay there by the time this takes effect, if they're still there as a seventh or eighth grader, they can remain there,
They
but
can
they have to
remain there.
provide their own transportation too.
Right.
Why
to
wouldn't they
Sparkman
just
Middle.
all stay there? Why would there even be an option? I don't really get that. I mean, what's the logic of saying, well, you can stay there, but we really want you to go to Monrovia Middle? I don't get that.
Well,
I guess to not disrupt the kids that are currently transitioning.
You're not gonna run buses for Sparkman Middle and Monrovia Middle.
yeah, no, we,
They're saying
that's,
that.
yeah, we won't. we
Right,
won't
so
be
just
doing
run them all from Sparkman Middle, because that's where they all go. I mean, why would you change them at that point?
Well, you'd have some
Because
kids
they're-
that are elementary that will start going to Monrovia Elementary,
that. Right.
right? So then you'll have buses from Monrovia Elementary. I get the kids that are currently at Sparkman Middle School, they can still stay at Sparkman. But if you do a zone change for that whole community, the early grades, definitely you'll have elementary school students that in the future will be going to Monrovia Middle School. And so for those middle school students currently, giving them that option to go to Monrovia just makes sense. And then if they want to stay at Sparkman, they can. But eventually, this won't be an issue because those elementary schools.
Right. The first year, it wouldn't be an issue at all, right? Because you have everybody, you don't have any middle school kids at Monrovia unless you tell them they can go there. The first year, they'd all be at Sparkman Middle. And then the next year, you'd have some that graduated from.
So you're saying just phase it out, let it phase out on its own? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the first year, for sure, you wouldn't have to say.
So you're saying, don't move anybody, don't move anyone, don't let anyone go to Monrovia the
Unless
first
they
year?
matriculate up through elementary schools.
But to Dave's point, you will have a lot of people with families that will want to send their kid to Monrovia. You may have some that want to send their kid to Monrovia Middle School because they have a child that is now zoned to Monrovia Elementary School. So do you want to give them an option? Or are you saying,
Because they want to take their own kids wherever they take them. I mean, if they're riding the bus, it wouldn't matter, right?
I mean, if you're in Sparkman Middle and you want to stay at Sparkman Middle, whether you're sixth, seventh, or eighth, you just stay at Sparkman Middle, but you have to provide your transportation. What I was saying is if you've got a younger sibling who would matriculate into Monrovia Middle while you've still got somebody going to Sparkman, would we allow them to continue to go to Sparkman instead of going to Monrovia Middle, or would you, you know what I'm saying? I mean, so if you've got that
I
eighth
see what
grader, it was, yeah, that's what I was talking about.
You're talking about a family that might have
Have a
two middle
split.
school kids and one in each
Yeah,
school.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I mean, that's gonna
That would
happen.
have family choice under the superintendent's proposal.
Right, I mean, it's gonna happen. You're gonna have a younger sibling that's gonna be just behind that older one, but that younger sibling's not gonna be in that grandfather to Sparkman and would end up going to Monrovia Middle naturally, whereas we're allowing the eighth, is it just eighth, or we just say only eighth graders can stay at, if you're gonna be in eighth grade when this takes effect, you can stay at Sparkman. Everybody else starts going to Monrovia
Well,
Middle.
we've talked about seventh and eighth grade.
Okay,
but I
either
mean,
way,
it could-
so,
Yeah.
yeah. Just something you'll have to work out.
So
Yeah,
you're
we
saying
just
you're
have to
not
work
going
through
to
it.
force
Something else.
anybody to do anything, it's their choice. Is that what you're saying?
No, just for seven and
So
eight.
if you have, I don't know if this helps explain, so if you have a child who's for next year, this takes effect. So you have a seventh and eighth grader who would have, without the living line change, would have attended Sparkman Middle. If those parents, we would give them an option, do you want your child to stay and finish out their time at Sparkman Middle, or do you want to transition them now to Monrovia Middle? So the parent would kind of have that choice. No, I want my child to go to Monrovia Middle, okay, we're good. Or, hey, my child's been on the basketball team, or whatever, you know. We want them to finish out their time at Sparkman Middle. So we only need those two grades. And then once that seventh grader went to the ninth grade, there's been more
think it would be like 25, 26 school years, then everybody starts
Right.
going into.
Then everyone goes.
Everybody goes into it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think, I have no problem with it. I just think you're gonna have a busing challenge. They're gonna say, well, you know, I want you to transport my child, which I understand. You're rezoning, and you're asking me to provide transportation.
There'd be another option, it's just not, just maybe you're already zoning you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you give an option, they're gonna, some of them are gonna wanna stay, and then they're gonna want you to provide transportation.
As long as it's on the paperwork that they sign that says, we understand that my son or daughter is going to Sparkman Middle and we have to provide our own transportation, you know,
To remain there, yeah.
yeah.
It's gonna seem like a penalty to some families, like
Yeah,
you're.
but then they can, yeah.
Or we
I-
could
I
just
hear you.
simply
Yeah.
say, you don't do it, you
Right,
just
to-
gotta
to-
go.
to- yeah,
To that email I sent earlier this week.
yeah.
So basically, the next steps through this is to look at holding the community meetings, get the information to the DOJ, because they have to approve it, correct, Cindy?
Yeah, they have, there's a process in your consent order that we will go through to give them the documentation to review. It does not, unless they ask for it, it's not have to go to the judge for approval anymore.
Okay.
For the new order.
Just has to be
So-
approved by the.
Unless they disagree with it, and we can't resolve what their concerns are.
So if they gave us the green light for that rezone, what is the typical process? I don't think we've had a rezone since we've been on the board. Is there community meetings? Is there discussions? What does that look
Well,
like?
you have done some rezoning, you've moved the Owens Crossroads kids to New Hope, but you have, and you had, I believe, you went down there and met, did a community meeting?
Yeah, that's right, we did.
Well, yeah, that was
Mr. Burke?
doing, so Matt actually did some community meetings first, and then COVID, I did videos
Yes.
and gave them input and Google Forms and things of that nature, but yes, we did do those, yeah.
Okay.
And we would do it with the impacted ones too, so. Anything else?
Well, so he said that Tony is growing, right, the man? Chuck Faulkner. So, in Madison Crossroads pool?
Madison Crossroads is almost at capacity. I think they're at capacity,
They're a little over.
little capacity.
Right, and that's where he identified
But that's where those
the
80,
developers are looking at.
but that's where those 88 students are gonna come out of in the Burwell section. That Burwell section is the Madison Crossroads.
So that's 80.
That's 88
88.
students.
So,
It gives us some breathing room for
Is
maybe
that like
2
3 or 4
years.
classrooms, maybe?
Yeah, the portables there too, that was the other thing that we had talked about with the portable ideas, you know, they're 8 approved, and we just have to figure out, okay, do we need 0 at Harvest for next year?
With the
We can
four-
move them over there.
3 at Lynn Fanning.
They're flexing.
2 at Madison Crossroads. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Malone and I were gonna go this morning, actually, at 6,000, but we're gonna go walk Madison Crossroads tomorrow. Get classrooms and see what bus spaces are there.
so you wouldn't consider building there, or is that the preliminary to building?
I don't know, I would not be looking in addition to that school, I think if you're looking to do any type of building in Madison Crossroads, it would probably be a cafeteria and gymnasium and upgraded into the space.
Agree.
You agree with that?
If you don't, your infrastructure really can't handle, I mean, it's not really great the size it is.
Correct.
That needs to be improved.
Like the plumbing?
No, the gymnasium and
Oh,
Yeah.
that part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Infrastructure, the number of restrooms, it's all that stuff that needs to be improved.
Oh, okay. So like, sort of like what we did at Lynn Fanning then,
Yeah, Central.
Yeah.
or Central?
Central, I think what we did at Central.
You just have to be, if you're adding more classrooms, you just have to make sure that your cafeteria space and your meeting space and that thing, which is one of the reasons we're looking, with adding that, the pre-K 6 six back at East Green Elementary, one of the reasons we built the project was to work on that little gym, to give that more capacity there, to do the cafeteria, deal with the cafeteria position. The cafeteria will be sufficient to serve, yeah, for configuration.
So I guess, so is the need at Harvest more or the need at Crossroads more?
Both,
Yeah,
I
that's a-
suppose. I suppose both of them would be, but.
They both
If we-
need-
If we have a funding source.
Well,
I
that's
would think
the,
School on McKee Road, and that's how I would get both of them, but you're looking at $30 million.
and we've talked about that, but again, kind of like, I said in the beginning, our dilemma is to work these things out with the funding sources that we currently have, because we don't have anything else. If we had the funds, we would do this different, but we
Well, I
just
guess
don't have them.
if you move more kids out of Harvest to Endeavor, who has plenty of room, in theory, so you wouldn't need to build at Harvest, right, if you did that. And then you could build it at
Well-
Madison Crossroads, because to me, they have more of an issue than Harvest does, but I mean, I'm not sure that's true.
Part of
but-
just capacity.
Well, there's some-
Harvest has, harvest is a lot more over capacity.
Right, but you have the ability to move some of those to Endeavor, where there's plenty of room, and Legacy has plenty of room, right?
Well, it never has to,
They both have room.
And then you could.
it never has about room for roughly 449 students, and Legacy has room for roughly 200.
Right, and then you could put your resources at Madison Crossroads instead.
Well, the other
Who
option.
seems to be the one that's gonna grow.
The other option at Crossroads would be to zone out some of the eastern half of Crossroads and zone that potentially into Hazel Green or something of that nature. I mean, there are. Yeah. But I'm just saying, I mean, that would be the other, I mean, if you were to move more kids out, I mean,
We are looking there, I mean, we're anticipating East Green High School and 7A school in another year.
oh,
Yeah.
well.
And their capacity is about 1,300, so.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's something we think we have.
It would be, I wouldn't want to be at that community meeting.
Mr. Rucker, the gentleman that, Mr. Cruiser, the engineer, he was talking about the growth on the north side of Sparkman area being in the Harvest area, and that there's people looking in the Tony area, that they're not proposed lots going in the Tony area yet. So while that's on the radar as potential growth, that's not actually happening yet, but the growth that is the proposal that they already have, that they indicated is in the areas that where it's gonna affect the harvest area. Is that not correct? And that what you
That's,
discussed?
well, harvest the community or harvest the school? Because there are places in North Harvest that actually are zoned into Madison Crossroads. I can't remember the exact delineation there, but I want to say it's Harvest Road or further south. I can't remember, 53? I'd have to look it up, but I mean, there's places that are in Harvest that actually are zoned into Crossroads, yeah. And I want to, I know exactly where it is, I just can't think of the road. It's north of Harvest Road. I think it's Harvest Road, actually. I think it's Harvest Road. So there are places north of Harvest Road that are actually zoned into.
And as we move forward in trying to stabilize our financial resources and actually secure an additional revenue stream, then the McKee Road, which is already on the capital plan, is a viable option to deal with that area as far as the growth area, as far as building the
Another
additional
elementary school,
And that, of course, that's tied to us securing that additional revenue
Yeah.
stream.
Oh,
And
but-
as Mr. Curtis stated, we're doing everything based on not going deeper in debt, but spending as we go. So we're moving, we're addressing the problems where the most critical needs are first and working our way out.
No, I think that's appropriate. I mean, because if I'm asking for an additional revenue stream at some point, my community and the commission are gonna say, what have you done with the capacity that you have? Have you maximized your capacity? Have you smartly allocated resources, students to different areas? And if you haven't, then we may get pushback on revenue, additional help with the revenue stream. So I think it's important that we do go through these processes and see where we have capacity and manage it well, and at some point still look at an additional revenue stream, because we're gonna need another school eventually. It's gonna happen anyway, and we may have to rezone again at some point or restructure. But we definitely need to maximize our capacities as much as we can with what we have right now. So I'm not against the pay-as-you-go method, as you call it. We just gotta make sure we utilize that capacity and spacing properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Item C, instructional updates. Mr. Solid.
I got one. I'm
go ahead.
gonna back up a little bit. Mr. Kazor, real quick question. The blacktop that was installed at Lynn Fanning, I know we talked about making it two-lane getting with Commissioner Brandon about two-laning the entrance. Is it gonna affect that blacktop at all? If we do it, it's gonna be fine? Okay. Just wanna make sure. Okay, all right, just wanna make sure.
I don't want to put speed ladies on me.
All right, just checking. Thank you.
Good evening. I've been asked to give some updates on one of our kind of key instructional initiatives this year. It's our K-5 reading program. And from having done this a minute or two, this is always one of those, this is like the funnest year in instruction when you get to initiate a new reading series in K-5. It definitely is one of those things you know you're going to leave the year with a few more gray hairs than you started the year with. It has always been that way, probably will always be that way. But it also, I guess the good news is, while it maybe starts a little bumpy, it always turns out good. So I'm confident that this will turn out well as well. Real quickly, just want to start off a little bit with the Alabama Literacy Act. You see that the act was passed initially in 2019, okay? And one of the things that I think it's important to note is the formation of the Literacy Task Force. That is a key component of the Alabama Literacy Act, and there's 13 members, and they have 4 priorities. They have 4 tasks that they're charged with, and that's providing recommendations for core reading programs, interventions, assessment, and professional learning for teachers. One of the big things about the Literacy Act, you can see there in its initial iteration, it indicates that school district or local education agencies shall offer a core reading program. Well, in 2019, when this came out, we did have a core reading program in Madison County, Scott Forsman, that we had had since 2009, 10-ish. So it was several years old. It was not in use in probably most of our classrooms in our district. Over that length of time, they tend to morph into other curriculums over that period of time. This is the memo from Dr. Mackey, where he just highlights the fact that the Literacy Task Force chose 2 curriculums, Amplify, Core Knowledge, Language Arts, which is CKLA, and McGraw-Hill's Open Court. He just notified school districts that the Literacy Task Force had adopted or had recommended, those 2 programs. So, as I mentioned, the task force had some responsibilities. The first one was a reading program, and you can see at the top, ARI put that out. They also listed the intervention programs and the assessments that they chose. And on the left-hand side of the screen, that's what Madison County is using. That's what we chose to use that had been recommended by the Literacy Task Force. So the last thing in 2019, probably the thing that is known the most for the Literacy Act is the retention piece. And initially, it said, starting with the 21-22 school year, that students had to demonstrate sufficient, not proficient, but sufficient reading skills in order to be promoted to 4th grade. So we moved forward to this past spring, 2022, they updated the Alabama Literacy Act with Act 2022-392, and you can see that they have underlined some pretty significant language in that, commencing with the 22-23 school year, an approved comprehensive core reading program shall be offered to schools. You know, LEA shall offer that. So anyway, that clearly, to me, clearly states that that's an expectation of the law, is to have a core reading program. And the two that were approved, you know, are that we mentioned previously. Act 391 changed the retention date to the 23-24 school year, okay? So there were some changes to the Literacy Act this past spring. So there were some questions that were asked about the selection process, and this was the first step is to get a committee, which this board approved in October, almost a year ago. And we have had about 60 people serving on that committee, and you can see the breakdown: teachers, admin, reading specialists, so on and so forth. All of these people have to have access to the materials, which they did. It is important to note in that first bullet, and I've had a few good conversations with Dr. Wayne Reynolds, our state board member for this area, about this. Dr. Reynolds, in our conversations, I knew that the state board did not approve a K-3 core program or textbook this year. And so I just wanted to clarify why that happened. And his response to me is the state board did not do it because if they had approved a K-3 textbook, it would only have allowed districts to use their state textbook money for one option, CKLA. By the fact that the state board did not approve either of those options, then districts had the option of using their state textbook funds for either one. So it made it just gave us more options. It gave us two options, really, potentially instead of one, even though as a district, I think we were committed, even if it meant using ESSER funds, whatever it took, we were going to get the best product based on what our people wanted, and we would have made that happen. But because of their actions, that would have been better financially for us to allow us to use those funds for either one. The third bullet there, you can see that all members of the committee and all educators who teach or support K-5 ELA had access to all materials digitally, and then they had print copies of sample materials at their local school. And there's a whole process by which teachers have access to that information. And then finally, all members of the committee were encouraged to attend the textbook caravan. That's put out, and you don't have to be a committee member to attend, but those who ultimately would make the selection are encouraged to attend that textbook caravan, and usually that's held at either a regional in-service center or a conference top site, a hotel, something like that, and all the vendors show up and they bring their materials and they have presentations set up all day long so our committee members can go in and learn more about that. The feedback process in a ballot that was sent to all teachers, not just the committee members, but all teachers were given an opportunity to provide input because they had the digital materials and they also had sample materials at their school. So we sent a survey out to every teacher, and they were able to give their feedback on it, and CKLA was the clear preference of those respondents. We also asked them to indicate how they felt. We kind of listed some areas. Is it strong, average, weak, and in these four areas, and CKLA received strong ratings in each of those areas of alignment to the course of study, quality materials, so on and so forth. And then finally, it comes down to the recommendation. So the actual group, that initial group, that committee, that's the ones whose vote matters in determining if it's a recommendation. But they take all that information, and they have the final vote of the committee that y'all approved. They took a vote. It was unanimous that CKLA was the core reading program, and they voted unanimously that they wanted it through 5th grade. Now, the Literacy Act only requires that through 3rd grade that we have to have an approved reading program, but they thought it made sense that we should continue that through all of our elementary grades. That recommendation then was sent to Mr. Perkins, who took it to the board, and it was approved on March the 21st, 2022. So, any questions, Literacy Act, selection process? Haley James is with us this evening. Haley's our elementary specialist, and God bless her. I'm thankful that she's working with us this year, and she has been a champion in helping get this up and running. But I asked her to come just to talk some about the program, but before she comes, if there's any questions about those first 2 sections, I'll be glad to.
So is this what parents have raised issues about, this right here?
The core reading program, yeah, we've had some questions about that, yeah.
The committee of.
And I'll talk more about those later, but go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Brooks.
No, I was gonna say the committee of 40 teachers, did you say they all unanimously voted for the CKLA?
That's correct.
I've got some teachers that reached out to me that said they didn't.
Are they on the committee?
They were on the committee.
That is not the information I have.
And they went to the Marriott or whatever for the little.
The textbook caravan, yep.
And they was wanting the open court. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Which they had a lot of discussion back and forth about it, but my understanding from that committee is that that was unanimous.
How is that recorded? Is that like,
I can find it, yeah.
I mean, is it like a written vote, or is it?
I believe that they turn in I think they have to sign off on that, yeah. Mm-hmm. They may have allowed them to do it electronically, and because it would have an electronic signature on that, but.
So I guess from the board's point of view, I mean, none of us went out and read the entire digital document.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't.
No,
So I didn't.
that's pretty accurate.
And so as we go along, more questionable things are going to be in these kind of things. So is somebody at the central office going to vet this? Or did they vet it?
So our elementary committee at the district read everything, not a sample.
And nobody had any issues?
They submitted the only things that they had concerns with you had before you voted on it. A document was shared with the board prior to y'all voting on it that it was, and I'll talk about those in a little while, but I'll talk about some concerns about world religions being taught that was shared with the board prior to voting on it. There was a book that had a picture that, I don't know, some thought might be controversial or whatever.
Yeah.
That was shared with the board before you voted on it. I was trying to think. There were a few, mainly, I guess I would say the majority of stuff that was shared prior to the vote was related to the religious connotations, I guess, that some have mentioned.
But even with some of the concerns, CKLA was still considered the superior curriculum over the open court curriculum.
By the people who selected it, based on the information that I have, that is exactly right.
Okay.
Not even debatable.
Okay.
And the information that I have is that it was unanimous.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can't.
telling me right now that she did not.
I can't speak to that, Mr. Brooks. I'm telling you, based on the information that I have right now, it was unanimous. So, I mean, I can check on that and get back
Certainly
with
the
you.
majority, though, right, so even if it's not unanimous.
I can tell you, based on the written information I have, is by the committee, the person over the committee, that it was unanimous, but I can't address, I can't address other conversations right now. I don't have the documents to prove right or wrong or whatever. I will, I'm sure I can. I don't have them in my office, but I'm sure I can get my hands on that.
But I do appreciate that looks like there was a process. I remember the board, we received some documents, the questionable things that were noted before we voted. With any curriculum, I would have some anticipation. There's always going to be something that may have questions, and there's opportunities to tailor instruction to kind of remedy some of those questions. But I do recall us having conversations about CKLA and it being the better of the two products. So I thank you for sharing how we got there
Yeah.
before and where we're at now.
Yeah. And I'll finish up with some other information, but I did want to let Ms. James come, and she's going to share some information actually about the program, hopefully to help you have a little better understanding of that.
Hi, I'm Haley James. So I'm just going to share a little bit about the structure of CKLA. So this graphic depicts the science of reading. And I think it's important that even if you don't know a lot about teaching reading, that you understand the science to understand the program. So there's two different colored ropes that intertwine together. So I'm going to start at the bottom with the greenish yellow ropes. Those ropes represent word recognition. So to be able to read and be a confident, fluent reader who can comprehend, you have to be able to look at a word and know what that word is. Read it, physically read it, like say the word. So to be able to do that, students have to build phonological awareness, which deals with hearing the sounds. They have to learn how to decode, meaning that they can look at the word, figure out the sounds, and put that together to say the word. And then they also have to build sight recognition. So when we look at words now as fluent readers, we know what those words read as. So that's the sight recognition. Then you also have to have language comprehension, which is background knowledge, vocabulary, understanding language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. And as you become increasingly strategic with that language comprehension, and you become increasingly automatic in reading words, those ropes start to intertwine, and that's where comprehension happens. Comprehension of text can't happen in the absence of either one of those. So that is important in understanding the structure of CKLA. So in kindergarten through second grade, knowledge and skills are broken into different units. So when students are in kindergarten, first and second grade, they have skills units that focus solely on word recognition, and then they have knowledge units that build language comprehension, which is essentially at those grades, listening comprehension, because it's done through read-alouds. As they progress, where the ropes connect, the blue and the green, that's about third grade, and then it continues progressing and intertwining so that students are able to read and comprehend. That's where we have integration of knowledge and skills. All of our third through fifth grade units integrate knowledge and skills into a comprehensive unit. So everything that they're doing with word work, vocabulary, background knowledge, it's all intertwined into a single concept or to a overarching concept. So this quote, teaching reading is rocket science, that's something that a lot of times we kind of laugh about as teachers, but it's so true. Because that word recognition piece there is very difficult. It's a very difficult, what we call code, for students to learn. The English language does have 26 letters, as we all know, a total of 52 when you see upper and lower case that are different. 44 sounds, but those 44 sounds have 150 different spellings. So the sounds first approach is taken with CKLA. That means that in kindergarten, when students are first started being introduced to reading, they're introduced to sounds and not letter names. So this symbol up at the top that we know as an M, students are taught that writing that M or drawing that M represents the sound. They're not taught yet that that's the letter M. They're taught simply to look at that symbol and produce the sound, which is Then they're taught the next lesson, A, which is sound. So they're taught those sounds first. So in Unit 3, which is about right now, I think our kindergarten classes are starting Unit 4, we have kindergartners that are already decoding all of these words and more. And that's something I know Mr. Solly was going to share even in the success stories, is that our kindergartners are already reading full words when a lot of times that doesn't happen until after Christmas. So that is the letter sounds first. Now those letter names are introduced in Unit 6, which is about right before Christmas or right after Christmas, kind of depending on the pacing. The other thing that's really important to know about the sounds first and the phonics progression is that it begins by teaching the most common spelling for a sound. So the sound represented at the top in the bubble is the short I sound, I. The most common spelling for I is the letter I. And if you see I, it, that is a very common spelling for that sound. That green bar represents that it's the most common spelling versus the spelling of short I with a Y. Short I can also be spelled with a Y, like in myth, but that's a very uncommon spelling. So it has a very small bar. These visual representations are used as we're teaching kids to spell words so that they can see that there are all these different spellings for sounds, there's 144, and that they all are kind of on a different level as far as how common or uncommon they are. The 150 spellings and the 44 sounds in English will be taught in an intentional progression from kindergarten through second grade. Our teachers have done a really fantastic job over the past several years building at their local school level different phonics progressions that work based on trainings that they've had. Many of our teachers have invested in letters training. They have invested in going to OG training, which is Orton Gillingham. But one of the things that CKLA does is it brings all of us on the same level with a common phonics progression. So when a child moves from one school in Madison County Schools to another, the phonics progression stays the same. Another example of the complexity of what we're teaching students is just the letter S has 7 different sounds. You don't really think about it as readers because we may or may not have learned it this way, but the sound S is spelled with an S, a C, a double S, a CE, an SE, an ST, and an SC. And all of these sounds and also how they're spelled are introduced by second grade. Then students practice these skills with what we call decodable text. Decodable texts are introduced in kindergarten unit 6, which starts about right before we get out for the holiday break or right when we come back. And that first, in the yellow, that would be one of the very first decodable texts. That's just a page. Kit can flip and flop. And you can see how that's decodable. It's got very clear spelling patterns in it. But by the end of kindergarten, that's an example from a page in the very last kindergarten decodable reader. This is Scott Green. Scott is 10. And so if you can notice the double E, that is the most common spelling for the long E sound, and that is introduced in kindergarten, which typically that is a skill that may or may not have been introduced until later. So the complexity of the text is pretty high, but it also follows that intentional progression that is great for kids. So then when we look at knowledge is done through a read-aloud format. And knowledge units are what builds background knowledge, vocabulary, language structure, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. This graph that you see kind of explains why that knowledge building and that listening comprehension is so important. So when children are born as babies, they're talked to, they begin developing language. Speaking and listening are very natural things for us. We are born with those, and those happen naturally. And so that listening comprehension develops at home before children come to school. However, most children don't come to school already fluently reading. Those are skills that we teach in school, because reading is a man-made skill. It's not something that's natural. So you'll notice when children enter school, their listening comprehension is much higher than their reading comprehension, which means children can't come to school and read to comprehend. They need to hear reading, read alouds, so that they can continue growing their comprehension as they're learning to read. And those two actually don't even out until about the age of 13. So why is knowledge important? Well, knowledge fills gaps. If a student can decode a text, can read all the words beautifully and fluently, but has no background knowledge or vocabulary to tie what they're reading to, then they're not going to be able to comprehend, and they're not going to be able to understand what the passage is about. This is an example 4th grade ACAT passage. This example came from the Alabama State Department of Education website, where all of the examples are put. And if you'll notice, there are some highlighted words there. And those highlighted words are words that, as an educator, I know if a child does not have background knowledge about these words, there's no way that that child will be able to comprehend that passage. And this is just one example, and it is a 4th grade passage. So words like emperor, a Persian folktale, ruled over Persia, stepped down from his throne. Down at the bottom, the words noblest deed. If they don't have background knowledge to tie that to, they will not be able to answer any questions or comprehend what they're reading. So in the K2 read aloud format, lessons focus on oral language development through vocabulary work, question asking and answering, open-ended discussions, and also the integration of oral and written language. Writing is a large part of the knowledge portion, and it continues also into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. It builds systematic knowledge, meaning that domains or units build upon one another. They build throughout the grade level, but then they also build across grade levels. So this is an example of some of the units that build on each other. It's not a complete list because there are many connections that can be made, but if you look across the top, kindergartners learn about plants. During that, they learn about photosynthesis, and then they continue to learn other scientific topics through the history of the earth, cycles in nature, ecology, geology, and chemical matter. And all of those concepts build background knowledge and vocabulary for science, physical science that they will take in middle school and high school. Through that middle row, you see in kindergarten, they learn about kings and queens. In 1st grade, early world civilizations. In 2nd grade, early Asian civilizations and also ancient Greek civilization. In 3rd grade, ancient Roman civilization and the Viking Age. In 4th grade, empires of the Middle Age. And then in 5th grade, the Renaissance and Reformation. All of that builds content knowledge and background knowledge so that when kids get into 8th grade and they start learning world history and beyond, they have something to attach meaning to. And then along the bottom, we have stories, fables and stories, fairy tales and tall tales. We have classic tales, that's The Wind in the Willows, poetry, and then in 5th grade, personal narratives. That progression sets kids up to be able to be ready for composition when they get into high school, writing papers, and then also studying literature. So if we go back and we look at this rope, I mentioned that at 3rd grade, that's where the integration begins. So 3rd grade has a combination of some read aloud and also student text. And then in 4th and 5th grade, it's almost all student text that's being read. And so if you look at this integrated strand, those lessons are built on reading, writing, vocabulary, morphology, which is an expansion of those phonics skills that they learned K2, grammar, and spelling. In 3rd grade, because they do have the read aloud and the student text, it is 120 minutes of instruction. In 4th and 5th grade, it's 90 minutes of instruction. And that's an example, just like a lesson at a glance of either 4th or 5th grade lesson. And 45 minutes is spent on reading, where they do whole group. They also do word work. They have some partner work in there. And then language is 30 minutes. It's separated into grammar and morphology. And then the writing, there's only 15 minutes there, but some lessons spend more time on writing. This is just an example. But the beautiful thing about all of that is how it intertwines all of those areas into one content area. So it's doing the morphology and the language and the grammar all built around one common theme. So the last thing I just kind of want to leave you with is really understanding those two different pieces, the skills and the knowledge. And if you think about a suitcase that you have to have two keys to open, one is that word level decoding, the other one is language, vocabulary, background knowledge, domain specific understanding. When schools focus heavily on one and not the other, comprehension is delayed for kids. But if you focus on both of them equally at the same time and you continue to grow that listening comprehension and that reading comprehension, then good readers will emerge. So, any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you.
Thanks.
Now to some of the issues and how we've tried to resolve those this year. So the first kind of category of this I would classify as more pedagogical concerns. These are issues related that most of the time our classroom teachers would look at as instructional issues. So one of those, and Ms. James alluded to this, the amount of time that it takes for a lesson. So in through K3, it's 120 minutes, so it's 2 hours. And then starting in 4th and 5th grade, it goes to a 90-minute lesson. In kindergarten, she mentioned that, the sounds first philosophy versus typically what would happen, we would, if not the first day, one of the first few days, we were introducing letters and moving forward with the letter of the week and kind of the alphabetic principle with that. But this program has a different philosophy, which is based on the science of reading, that you teach sounds first before you teach letters. There have been some concerns brought forth that it's too rigorous, that it's difficult, and I guess one of the reasons for the Literacy Act is the fact that there's concern in the legislature, whatever, that our students are not reading at the same rate and level that students across the nation are. So to have a more rigorous curriculum probably is in alignment with what the Literacy Act is all about. There's been questions about grading. Some of the assignments and stuff, they look different. They're graded different than how we have been grading over the last few years. The fact that I would say over the last several years, a good bit of our reading lessons have been largely small group, with kids rotating in centers, and more of this is done whole group. And then just kind of the concern that because this is a core program that builds on its information, it's just, okay, you got to start sometime. What happens if you don't have the prior knowledge? Well, kids are still learning in school. They may not be learning what's in this program, but I think that's something that just at some point in time you gotta start. So if we think about a resolution or how we're working to resolve these issues, it's all about learning more about the program. I mean, just how do you do that? We have, obviously, each week, we have time set aside in our schools for collaborative teams to meet. I venture to say most of our, if our principals were here, or reading coaches, or even the teachers, a good bit of that collaborative time is spent around talking about this curriculum and trying to get more specific about what's going on with it. At our summer North Alabama Teaching Conference, we had sessions on CKLA. During our pre-service days, every K-5 teacher in this district had training, full day, to get them started and get them a better understanding of what the curriculum is about. We will have on-site training at every one of our K-5 schools starting next week. Would have been this week, but the trainer got the flu, so we had to back it up. And so starting next week, they will have on-site training. We will have another round of on-site training in spring, probably February timeframe. We're finalizing dates on that right now. We have purchased additional training for our large elementary schools, schools that just have more teachers. It's going to be more difficult to make sure they get the same level of training. So our district's purchasing additional support for them. Our district staff, like Miss James, Bonnie Richburg, who's one of our she's our elementary specialist, and Nancy Curry, who's our another elementary specialist. All three of them have been working with schools regularly to help with any questions they have. We have literacy specialists that are in every one of our schools. And then, thanks to the board, we had e-learning days, which are great pause points that our teachers have that they can take time to take a deeper dive into this curriculum and learn more about it. So the resolution is education. These are all, I've talked with, I mean, obviously I was a part of our previous adoption, actually our previous two adoptions. And, but just going back and kind of reminiscing with people that were also part of those adoptions, I was kind of talking through some of these issues with them. And they said, you know, we had the same, like when we did Scott Forsman, these were the same issues. Probably when we did the adoption before that, these were the same issues, okay? So these are not things that were not predictable, okay? We know that. The DNA of an elementary teacher is they are passionate about teaching reading. And thank God for them. Thank God that they are, because most of us know how to read today because of them. I have tremendous respect for them, tremendous respect for their knowledge. Our teachers have done magnificent work over the last few years with not having a high-quality resource to teach our children with. But I kind of look at it like this. You get somebody that's really good at anything, and you give them a really good tool, which this curriculum it's highly rated by any measure you look at. Even its worst critic, and I've had some teachers who are big-time critics will tell me, we really like this about it, but but we really don't like this. So even its critics point to some of its strengths. But you put a good tool in a sharp person's hand, and they're going to do amazing things with it. Having high-quality instructional materials has been identified as one of the main things that is going to help our children overcome the effects of the pandemic. We know that. I mean, that's research-based. That's not my opinion. That's based off people that looked at data from other issues similar to what we've experienced, and have arrived at that. But we also have some other issues that have been brought up, okay? Probably the first thing that came to our attention, and this is something we knew back during the adoption process. So, but it came up back at the start of school. Was there are units in the book that discuss world religions, okay? And so looking at that in the curriculum, the intent, like Ms. James said, is to provide the vocabulary and context so that our students can understand. I mean, we know this as adults. We know religion has played a significant role in the formation of civilizations, countries. It's led to wars. It's led to, I mean, it affects so much of what we do and who we are, not just in our country, but in countries around the world. So the purpose for it being in the curriculum is to try to educate, help people understand, so that they will understand the history of events in the world. However, as we I would say we have a culture of doing in our district. If our teachers and our people reach out to us and they say, you know what, we have some issues with this, okay? Well, then let's come up with a different plan. And that's what we did, and we did it quickly. This issue was brought forth, and we knew about it, and, we're sitting there, and so Miss James worked with some others and came up with alternative assignments for any of the grade levels that were to be impacted, got those out. We met quickly with our administrators and reading coaches to make sure that we had good procedures in place. If other things arose that, okay, hey, this is something that something that maybe that they feel like could be controversial, but it didn't maybe catch up the radar of those who read the material at first, okay? And so we talked to them about those procedures. How, generally, I guess if you just want to kind of sum it up a little bit, but if there's an issue, they talk with their principal, they get their collaborative team together, and they make a decision as a team. Those kind of things have been happening in Madison County for 35 years, 36 years that I'm aware of. I don't know why it wouldn't still work now, that we can trust our people to look at something, decide, and make a decision off of it. And we trust them to do that. And so far, knock on wood, that has worked well. The thing that we have encouraged them to do is if they look at material, if they're going to replace it, that they try to replace it with information that is still in the vein of what we're trying to learn. Because, again, if we go in a totally different direction, the program builds on itself. The knowledge builds on itself. We have to use different literature. There's plenty of literature out there that can be looked at. This is kind of the mindset that we have approached it with our teachers, is implementing with integrity instead of fidelity. We expect it to be used daily and with consistency. But there are things that teachers can think about as they're doing it. The program, you can take it. I had somebody tell me the other day, they went in 2 high-performing teachers' classrooms, people that have had good data for years. One classroom, the teacher's reading the material, but they're engaging with the students in a different way. They went into another classroom, the teacher was just reading the lesson from the book, okay? 2 very different experiences. One teacher is more comfortable, I'll put it that way. One teacher has gained more comfort in what the lesson is asking them to do. The other teacher is still learning the content, learning the flow of the material. And as both of those teachers learn it better and better and better, they're going to be able to put their personality, they're going to be able to put themselves into that lesson, and that's when the magic's really going to happen. But just some things. So how would they say it? Okay? They don't have to read it verbatim from the book, but they also have to be comfortable enough with what the program is asking them to do. How they word it doesn't change the integrity of what the lesson is. And that's going to take some time. That's not going to happen quickly. Will this activity engage my students? How should I adjust it to make sure that it does? They have the autonomy to look at the lesson and make those decisions. Right now, they struggle with that because they're not comfortable with the curriculum yet. They will get comfortable over time, and as they get more training in how to make these things happen. But until that happens, I get it. It's not nearly as much fun, and it's not nearly as engaging on the teacher's end. And I get it. I sympathize with them while they're learning it. But I don't know of another way to speed that process up, other than to know that training has happened and training will continue to happen. to make that work go. This was one of the early, I guess, criticisms that came out. This made the rounds on social media and stuff, this middle picture here. But this is a book, the title of it is Swamp Angel. Just have a brief little synopsis there of the book, okay? But it's a folk tale of a young lady. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. You can kind of see her on the cover, who they have dubbed the Swamp Angel. That's not her given name. That's the name that in the book. But basically, she's the greatest woods woman in the state of Tennessee back in the early 1800s, and she saves her town from a bear attack. The bear, I think in the story they call the bear Tarnation. What is it? Thundering Tarnation is the name of the bear in the story. So it's written very much in the vernacular of rural Tennessee back in the early 1800s, and it uses that language. In the picture that has been kind of sent around and depicted as illicit and sexually oriented picture or whatever, what is happening in the story at that time is there's a group of people, including the Swamp Angel, who have set out to find this bear that has terrorized their town, and they're going to have a day of reckoning with the bear. And the bear has a day of reckoning with some of the people first. And the bear puts a bucket of molasses on top of this guy's head, and he's embarrassed by that. The picture at the bottom they cut off, that's a guy that's stuck in a bear trap that the person had put out to capture the bear in. And there's some other pictures, and they're meant to be humorous and to go on with the story there. And I think the wording there in the story, it talks about the guy thought he was going to get tarnation, but tarnation gave him a licking or something to that effect or whatever. And they've made this into something that it is clearly not. This book was published in 1995. The rest of that story is this. This book has nothing to do with our reading curriculum. I mean, it's a trade book that is that's mentioned in some of the literature with our CKLA. If we had purchased the trade books with this, we might have gotten this book, but we didn't. We didn't purchase the trade book.
This isn't used in any of our schools?
This book is in some of our libraries.
Okay.
It is, but it's not part of our reading curriculum.
That's fine.
But it has, with some, I mean, it's been tied pretty closely to it, and I don't know. It's just not. This was another one that kind of made some of the early rounds, the Moans at Midnight. This is a reading passage, third grade, I think. I'm sorry. It's a reading assessment passage. I believe it's third grade, but the story's about two friends spend the night. One of the friends, the sister, the two boys, they watch a scary movie, I think, and one of the boys' sisters kind of scares them after they go to bed, kind of deal. The title of it was upsetting to some. The moans are because the sister was hiding in a closet making a moaning sound to scare the brother and his friend and stuff. So, but this isn't an activity book. This is not a story that is something that's taught. The purpose of this is just strictly a fluency passage. A child would sit down and read this. Teacher would time them, say how many words a minute they're reading, those kinds of things. So, there's a handful of stuff. I mean, I could spend another hour, just going through some stuff. Not that there's that many, but it just takes a while to share the context of some of the things that have been brought up and have been mentioned. I do think it would be remiss if I didn't share some of the success stories, and these are just comments. I mean, I don't have pictures of this or anything else, but I don't know. These may be refuted. I've heard them though. Nobody, you know, I think I can find the people that'll stand behind saying this, but the strategies, one teacher early in the school year stopped by our classroom, and she was really saying, hey, the pre-service workshop we had really helped, showed me how to annotate the lesson, that helped me stay on pace, help keep my students engaged with this. So one person, my students have been more engaged with the stories from the knowledge strand than ever before. I've heard that a lot, you know, that people say the material the kids really like. My students are writing more than ever. I do have pictures of this. I've attached the work from one SPED student, one ACE student, one Gen Ed student, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a difference, and from reading it, you would be. The vocabulary that the students are exposed to will definitely help them on the ACAP. At the new teacher, our new teacher training, one of them stopped me and said, you know, just as a new teacher, it's been helpful having a program that's already coordinated, put together, instead of me having to kind of either figure it out on my own. So just some of the things, and again, I could spend another hour or longer talking about some positive things, but those things don't, you know, they don't always get our attention as much as some of the negative does. I don't know. Questions about any of that? I don't know if that's everything you wanted, but.
Any questions?
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will, absolutely. I mean, I'm like.
We, the board doesn't take questions from the audience.
Yeah.
I will gladly talk to you.
All right. IT updates, grant award. Nikki's gonna come cover that.
She's got to come out from behind
Yep.
the Oz curtain.
We just wanted to share some good news. We were notified as of Friday that the IT department has been awarded funding to cover a position from the Alabama State Legislature. These funds were provided to schools to kind of help with cybersecurity and supplementation. We submitted an application this summer. It was about 109 questions long, and we had to kind of prove that we're doing what we need to as far as security and implementing some programs that the state has enacted. But with this position, or with the application that we submitted, we're kind of fortunate, more so than some other districts, because we already have a security person on staff, which is wonderful. We're really excited. She does a great job. As a matter of fact, she does such a great job that she takes on more than her responsibilities entail, as do most of us. But with this position, this is going to allow us to take those responsibilities that we've kind of been filtering through her and myself to cover some other things that need to be done, and let her solely focus on security. So what we did in the application was submitted for a system specialist. But what I found out is we actually do not have a system specialist job description that is current. So what we need to do at this point now is go back and draft, and this is what we're proposing, an IT system specialist, and the job responsibilities that will entail for that person. So this is a proposal for a job description, and using funds that we're going to receive from the state.
How much are we receiving from the state?
$67,500. And that is a maximum allotment of what they would allow us to apply for.
Is that, how long is that good for? Is that forever?
It's actually, it started the fund has been in place for a while. This was kind of a joint effort between the Alabama Leaders in Educational Technology and some people at ALSDE that went to bat on our behalf. And so last year, we actually received $25,000. And so there was a 3-year plan in place to kind of implement this and steadily increase funds. So ALET did such a good job at kind of working with legislators to make sure that the funds were available, that they took a 3-year process and kind of narrowed it down to 2. And so now the full funding amount is $67,500. That is, the idea there is that will only continue, and it's actually written into the Education Trust Fund budget. The difference is with that money is that we actually have to apply for it and prove need, and then we also have to document what we're doing with that money in retrospect.
And that's each year you do that, and then you get it. Okay.
We wanted to bring the job description back to you in the next board meeting for approval, so that way you can go ahead and get the job posted, so we can get them hired before the holiday season, so we can
Is this added to one of the existing scales? Which one does it fall?
Specialist.
Specialist, okay.
So this actually already exists in the salary schedule. The name system specialist is there, but I think what's happened over the years is we've used the network specialist job description title to kind of cover all the specialists, and now we're starting to actually designate specific people for specific reasons. So this is first draft and what we're proposing. Any questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, student code of conduct, Ms. Wick.
Everyone. So the Madison County School System has an anonymous tip line that used to be called Safe to Tell. It's monitored by the Madison County Sheriff's Department. Students, parents, anyone from the community can anonymously report if they feel threatened or unsafe. They can also report, drugs, weapons, anything that they feel like makes them unsafe at school, bullying, to this anonymous tip line that is, like I said, monitored by the Madison County Sheriff's Department. It used to be called Safe to Tell, but because of possible copyright violation, we had to change the name. So it's now called MCSS Safe Schools Tip Line. And so in the Code of Conduct, all we did was just change the language to reflect that change. A very simple change, didn't change any policies. The numbers, all the contact information is still the same. We just changed the name. Are there any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wick.
All right, discussion of future board meeting dates. Dr. Minsky, you got those?
I'll stop. I don't have them pulled up on my computer.
So the next session, the next meeting we have scheduled on the calendar is the November 10th work session. I know the items we're looking there right now are the academic, high school academic guide. Also looking at an instructional update, looking at academics, test scores. I do know we need to, there's something we need to get something approved in that meeting for the financials.
So that's the next meeting, the 10th? We're not having one at the end of the month?
We have one more, there's no, yeah, we have one the 25th of October. which is
Oh,
the
okay.
regular board.
Okay, okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm just making sure.
The one we need to talk about would be the next meeting after the 10th meeting. So we've got information, received information in reference to the new board members that would be elected, would not be completely certified, is that the correct terminology? Until the 18th. So one option would be to do the meeting on Friday the 18th, which is the Friday before Thanksgiving. With that particular meeting, that would need to be an earlier set meeting.
Does that mean we come or we don't come?
That would not be
Okay.
the 10th, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The other option is to look at Monday, the 21st of November, which is the Monday before Thanksgiving.
On the 18th? Okay. So I guess that would really be the question for the three of us.
Yeah.
Um,
So is he really?
How does Monday the 21st, are you, that week of Thanksgiving, are you guys out of pocket or? Okay. My only thought was, you know, I would like the new board members, they're probably swearing on that meeting. And having that 5:30 gives time for them to come and have a formal process.
You know, we'll have one set that we won't have until after the election.
Correct.
Days.
Yeah, so, right, right.
But if he dropped out, his name can be on there. If he dropped out, he's not a true candidate, because the guy that hired him is the primary.
They'll start,
Once the election's certified.
yeah, they'll start on that Monday, that 21st. So that'll be their first meeting.
Not if he dropped out. It's just a technical thing.
Don't look at me.
So that Monday, that's okay with you guys? And as I told Dr. Minsky earlier, I would like for them, those board, I'm going to request the 3 or the 4 people show up for the 10th meeting, just as people who spectate. I don't believe we're gonna have anything that they'll have to approve. We're gonna try to have not much new existing business that they approve. We're gonna try to keep it very limited, so they're not approving something that they didn't have a meeting on.
I mean, you said that, I mean, whoever wins my seat and Bill or whoever wins,
Right.
they would be the only two that would have to be there on the 10th. right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Right.
This conference on the 10th, we also need, is that the evening in which we have to elect a new president, vice president? and that'd be
Well, so I believe the 10th is when we're gonna need to do that. Is that correct?
You have to do that in the month of November, so. Yeah, you typically do that in the first meeting of November, if my memory is correct.
Yeah, we did it last year around the 11th of November. I look back at my notes.
It was the first meeting in November.
Yeah, it was, and I think,
I'm sure you almost always have done it
In
in that
November,
first
yeah.
meeting. I did not look at that specifically. And
I know you can't do it before November, but it was always done in
Yeah,
November.
the statute says, I'm pretty sure.
Why wouldn't you do it after the new people come?
what's that?
Why wouldn't you do it after the new people come?
I mean, you could, I guess my thought would be, that's my assumption, of the new board members that first year, they're gonna need time to acclimate, get comfortable. And so this current board who knows the structure could go ahead and set those parameters for them. And then the next year, they could vote in that process. That was my thought. I mean,
Mr. Curry, the statute says the County Board of Education shall hold an annual meeting each year in November. At this meeting, the board shall elect each year one of its members to serve as the president and one to serve as the vice president.
okay,
So you could do it either.
you could do it anytime in November.
Just has to be.
But that was my thought behind it. I mean, we don't have to do it before they are seated, but my thought was they would want to come in and get comfortable, get acclimated. They wouldn't know they don't know the makeup of the board at that point. So when I came in, I had a couple of years to get acclimated before I thought about those type of thoughts. So that was my only thought. We could do it.
I'm pretty sure that when we came on, you guys had already changed over. You were president of the board and Mary Louise was vice president of the board. I'm pretty sure that happened before we came on the board
I
ourselves.
don't think so.
Maybe, I don't know. I thought it did. You can go back in the minutes and look, but I thought
Yeah,
it did.
I can look in the.
You were definitely the president and Mary Louise was vice president, and I don't recall us voting on that
When you got,
when we
the-
got
as
on
your
the
first
board.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
I seem to remember we did, but I could be
I
wrong.
could be wrong. I don't know. I just,
Yeah, when
I see.
I first come on, it was already set.
it was already set.
Yeah, so it was just, I guess, the meeting before.
Right.
And then I came in, it was kind of like, it was already set up the 2 weeks before.
What are y'all thoughts? Do you think we should too? I mean, my thought was the new board members probably,
I can look and see.
that's a decision that they may not necessarily feel comfortable doing it initially, so. My thought was this existing board that has some history could do that, but I don't mind either way. So what are your thoughts on that? Sherry, you think we should?
Well, we can check and see how it went. It seems like I remember Mary Louise calling me and pretty much telling me what was gonna go down.
Okay, all right.
But I'm pretty sure that Angie was the president at the time. We came on the board.
Oh,
It's years ago, right?
Yeah, 6 years ago.
Everybody was new looking at
Mm-hmm.
That's not the only reason.
I mean, we can look it up.
But we can discuss more, after this meeting, but, yeah, that was just my thoughts about it. Yeah. So.
If you guys are okay, I will send you like for the
Okay.
What were the other days?
10th and the 21st.
And he's talking about December,
December,
January,
the
to
other
May,
ones we don't have on.
to June.
So we're board members till the 21st, legally.
I thought they said we didn't have to come.
No, we don't have to come, but we still are representatives. I mean, until they're actually sworn, we still are retaining our seat as a board member until the 21st. Is that not correct, Kathy? Until they are officially sworn in, we retain our seat as a board member until that date.
So, yeah, you will be present in the meeting, I believe, and then you can sit in the crowd when they're seated.
We don't even come. David and Jeff didn't come to the meeting that we
So if you
were
just
sworn.
came just because you want to be here, pretty much.
We want to.
Okay.
We're talking about
The 21st. It's the 21st now, I think.
Oh, it's the 21st.
Okay. All right.
You bet we don't come.
No.
I'm gonna go ahead and get this show on the road. We're gonna keep moving. All right. Madison County Special Session for Thursday, October 13, 2022 is in session. Mr. Perkins.
All right. I recommend approval of the agenda dated Thursday, October 13th, 2022.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for the approval of the agenda dated October 13, 2022. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Administrative items A, I recommend approval of the August 2022 financial statements and payments of bills as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the August 2022 financial statement and payment of bills as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item B, I recommend approval of the bid renewal as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the bid renewal as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item C, I recommend approval of the contracts for services as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of contracts for services as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item D, I recommend approval of the personnel items, Addendum 1 and Addendum 2 as submitted.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of personnel items, Addendum 1 and Addendum 2 as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item E. Item E, I recommend approval of a 2-year probationary principal contract as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the 2-year probationary principal contract as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item F, I recommend approval of the supplemental contracts and discontinued contracts as submitted.
Motion.
Motion is second for the recommendation for approval of supplemental contracts as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We do have a letter authorizing us to go to executive session. But before we do that, we think it'll be fairly brief, but is there anything for the good of the board you want to say? Okay. Well, again, I want to thank Mr. Solly and everybody who presented this evening. Great information, great insight, zoning, construction, CKLA, safe to tell, all that. Thank you guys very much. It was very valuable. We've gotten a lot of calls, questions specific about the CKLA, so it was delightful to hear the process, the fact that we have subject matter experts that look at this and review it, give feedback, and there's opportunities for teachers to do a lesson a different way if necessary. So I was delighted to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Solly, for that feedback. But if there's no other, I went to the ASB meeting last week down in Montgomery. They talked a little bit about CKLA, also talked about the Alabama Numeracy Act, something that you guys are well aware of, and math coaches. Really good insight at that conference last week in Montgomery. So more to come on that. And I guess you guys are short timers, so y'all won't have to worry about that too much. But yeah, good conference.
Those are always good conferences down there, the
Very good.
fall ones.
It's very good. All right. Need a motion to go into executive session.
Hold on real quick. We have we have teacher of the year on the 1st. Is that?
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
So we got, Pastor Bell contacted this afternoon, so we may have to move that to the following Monday. After we get the final Saturday.
Okay.
We're doing some construction, I believe, at the church, and want to make sure that things are ready for us for that particular day.
Around the 8th or something.
As of right now, it's the first, but there's a very good possibility it would be due to the following Monday, the 7th.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Motion to go, I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
We're in executive session.